Good afternoon, our Facebook family and our Facebook audience. I've opened the Facebook live stream for today's Lunchtime Live. Again, I'm always waiting to see if we have an audience. My name is Maria, and I am opening with a shot of what we call the Tidal Linkage here at the Tijuana Estuary, just south of the Visitor Center. Off trail on the south side of this Tidal Linkage or connector channel. It was actually a restoration effort in the late 90s. Hi Donna, thanks for joining us. Hey Bob, you're here with us today. Awesome, wasn't expecting that. How is the sound? Folks, it's a little windy. I'm out here off trail and yeah, hi Bob. We can hear you well. Sounds windy. Yeah, it is windy. Well, I won't stay up here on the edge for too long. I just thought I'd open with a shot of the marsh, and I am going to get down on the ground and hopefully out of the wind. But let me just, for a sense of place, here you are at the Tijuana Estuary along the Tidal Linkage off trail. There's that, I guess, somewhat iconic bridge here. The only place you can cross the marsh. At the Visitor Center, near the Visitor Center and on the reserve, if you're familiar with where we are. But you can see it's a beautiful day, a little windy, and it's Lunchtime Live. So we are live out here from the salt marsh. We don't do a lot of these, but we have a special, I guess, a treat for you. So we have a salt marsh species that this is a good time here to highlight it. So let me just... Thank you. Hi, just want to show my face real quick, just to say hi, everyone. For those of you who know me, my name is Maria. For those of you who don't, my name is Maria, and I'm an education specialist here at the Tijuana River National Estuarine Research Reserve, or Tijuana Estuary, bringing you Lunchtime Live today on this beautiful day. So, you ready to see some sea lavender? We're gonna get down on the edge there at the high marsh and get up close and personal with sea lavender. So let's see some sea lavender. And you can see the helicopters are nice and active today at lunchtime. So let's see about getting the camera off the tripod, out of the wind, and down along the marsh there. So we can see it's a beautiful day. The tide is a little over 5 feet high, right about probably now. Was a lot higher earlier, and the ground is still wet on the edge, but you can see it changes quickly from salt marsh to coastal sage scrub upland where I am. And I want to get down here on the edge for our salt marsh species for Lunchtime Live. How many of you are familiar with a plant we call sea lavender? Have you seen sea lavender before? And if not, no worries. Not many of us are able to get up close and personal with the salt marsh. And by the way, if you have any questions or comments throughout the program, feel free to type them in. Feel free to post and comment later or ask questions later, as we often go back and reread those and answer those to get back to you. So, all right, so sea lavender, Limonium californicum. Limonium californicum. And right, in the salt marsh there are quite a few species. We've highlighted salt marsh plants before. Not quite the diversity as in the coastal sage scrub, but there is some. And you can see they don't grow in rows or in squares. They grow in and among each other. So hopefully this will be able to distinguish for you the sea lavender, Limonium californicum, and it is in the Plumbaginaceae family. Say that fast, Plumbaginaceae. And most of these, salt marsh plants, they don't get very tall. 1 to 2 feet maybe, except for like the cordgrass. But this is one that it can get about 1 to 2 feet, but only a particular part. So let me get down here and share the sea lavender with you. Now, maybe you're noticing quite a bit of green vegetation, variety of leaf shapes and sizes. But what I want to focus on is these wider, sort of a little more broad, what we call ovate shaped leaves. These leaves belong to the sea lavender, or western marsh rosemary is another common name for this plant. And you can see, and I do have the macro with us today. It has got this wider leaf, ovate shaped, kind of leathery and succulent-like, although it's not a succulent. And the way these, actually, I'm gonna move a little closer to me so you can see there's an individual here. See how they are formed, I should say, or how they are growing from this plant. Can you tell that the leaves all come from the center and the bottom? We call this, a basal rosette. So a basal rosette, flowering almost. So the leaves are in a basal rosette form. You can see there's quite a few of them. And they're really just kind of getting going. This is a plant that does flower, and we'll see that in a minute, but you can see some of the old leaves here. It's a perennial and somewhat evergreen, but you see there's an old leaf and the new leaf. So this is, an individual that grows year after year. This small basal rosette that can get quite large. And this is, here in the high marsh, it can handle quite a bit of salt. And as you know, may know from previous broadcasts or general knowledge of salt marshes, these plants are salt tolerant. They're not salt loving, they are salt tolerant. They handle these high extremes of salinity. And there are a couple of methods, and we did this, I think, last year, maybe about this time, where there are a couple of adaptations for dealing with salt. And the sea lavender, or western marsh rosemary, Limonium californicum, is one of the excretors. So what it does is that it absorbs salt through its roots and up through the stems and leaves. It excretes that salt out onto the leaf. And we're not seeing this right now, but often we can see quite a bit of salt crystals as it's been dealing with salt over the season. So these are all relatively new leaves. I came out here, I've been keeping an eye on it to see when would be the best time to broadcast this plant, and really it's this time of year. So these are fresh leaves. They haven't needed to do that much excreting, I guess, and so we're not seeing those salt crystals, but maybe you can see that there's sort of a leathery feel to them, and that soft, they've got that kind of entire margin, sort of succulent-like, but they're not. They're not what accumulators. They are what we call excretors. And I'll put the macro on there, get a better view of the leaf. So that's the leaf. We're seeing a lot of the leaf right now. A lot of the leaves from the basal rosette, green color, the darkish green color. Very different than many of the other salt marsh plants. Now, this plant, so this is a basal rosette. These leaves do not have a stem. They come from the bottom. They grow at the bottom. Okay? But what we do, where there is a stem, and I'll have to lean over here a little bit, is you see this woody stem. A woody stem with flowering portions, flower clusters at the top, okay, at the top. Flowering now. This is a summer to fall flowering salt marsh plant. And again, not the time of year that you would think would be the time that it flowers. And it just sends up this stem from the center. Now, if you guys can see, it's tough with all these plants growing together. Sends out a single stem from the center of the basal rosette up to, in this case, this one's probably about 10 inches or so high, but they can get taller. And flower clusters are at the top there. And what color, let's put this macro on. What color are those flowers? Small cluster of flowers. Let me see if I can get the wind to stop. Hope everyone can still hear me okay. And it's tough. The wind is the wind is with us, even down here. What color are those flowers? Very beautiful. Really tough with the wind. Now there's another individual over here. A lot more flowers. Not all of them open yet. Like I said, this is a summer to fall bloomer. Anyone see? Can you see the coloration? I hope this isn't making anybody a little nauseous with that wind. I cannot get the flowers. Maybe there. What color are those beautiful flowers? So we're seeing them here as lavender, kind of a lavender purple color. Sometimes they're a little more whitish. That's the natural range in colors, like white to purple, right? Does it remind you of anything? Do these flowers remind you of something you've seen, something a bit more common, a bit more maybe everyday in the flower family? So this is, these flowers support a couple of species of moth. I think one is called the celery leaf deer, and also a sunflower moth. Okay. Also attract bees to these tiny little flowers. Anyone seeing any familiarity or this plant resembling something they've seen before? If you've ever given somebody a flower bouquet, there may be a cousin to this, this Western Marsh Rosemary that you've seen before. So this is, like I said, this is a native to the Western United States, from Oregon down to Baja. However, there are some introduced species of the sea lavender that have been brought to our region that have taken over, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But also something that's grown for the flower industry, we know as statice. So this is basically a native statice. Statice we might be more familiar with. You've seen it in the flower bouquets you buy. A variety of colors sometimes. Yes, Cindy, they are very pretty, very delicate like. Although quite hardy leaves and that woody stem supporting those flower clusters. Tiny, but also have that kind of graceful, sort of delicate appearance to them. See the flowers standing much higher above the leaves. So those of you, how many of you been to the Tijuana estuary and have taken that trail from 5th and Iris out towards the river mouth? And if not, there's a guided nature walk on the 4th Saturday of the month. Docent Ann will take you out that way. But if you get far enough, there's an area that just flourishes with one of the non-native sea lavender. One that looks a bit more like the statice that we're familiar with in our flower bouquets. Okay, and that is, and it's quite beautiful. Also purple and white in color. Yes, Cindy. Well, yes. Thank you. You've been on every path There are beautiful paths here. I'm so glad that you've been able to see them. Have you seen the non-native status when it's in full bloom down there close to the river mouth? It's quite a sight. It's quite a sight. Even though it's not native, it's quite a sight. This is not that plant. This is the native one, and unfortunately, the one I'm referring to down there is quite invasive. It's got taken over quite an area. It bloomed a long while ago. It's no longer blooming, so or I would have gone down and picked some for comparison. There it is, the Californicum, Limonium californicum, sea lavender, western marsh rosemary, one of our salt marsh plants, our salt marsh excretors. It's dealing with salt by excreting. That we don't see right now. Maybe we can do a broadcast when we see more of that. It's quite obvious where the backs of the leaves, undersides, are just covered in white, sparkly material, salt. Okay. And one bonus question here. Let's see if there are any other questions while you all are formulating questions, if you have any. Is anyone who's been on this program before, when we were in the very same area, notice anything that we highlighted before? Notice anything we've highlighted before? I'll give you a hint. It's orange in color. Orange in color. Can you see that? Stringy, sort of almost looks like fishing line, or monofilament orange. And that's the salt marsh dodder, or the Cuscuta salina. So they're the salt marsh dodder. So I'm in the very same location when we featured that plant a couple of months ago. Deborah got it. Dodder, yes, very good, right on. You know your salt marsh plants. That is the salt marsh dodder. So there you can see quite a mix. And then there's another species in here that is the salt grass, that little spiky leafed plant, another excretor, and actually very sharp, which is why I'm being sort of careful here. So I'm wearing some shorts, and these this little plant, but leaves a mark. So there it is, Western Marsh Rosemary, or as many of us just call it, sea lavender, but it's one of many species. Let's see, are there any human uses of sea lavender? Good question. Not to my knowledge. Oh, look at you, Deborah. Disticulus littoralis, yes. The shoregrass. Shoregrass, Disticulus littoralis. Not to my knowledge. I didn't see that in my research, but it does support the sunflower moth and the celery leaf tear, and some bees will frequent these as well. So, but anyway, not a big flower, not a lot of flowers. I mean, not large flowers, but a lot of flowers. Okay. All right. Any last questions regarding the sea lavender? See, there's so many of those little basil rosettes starting out over here. I don't know if these are getting picked up on the camera the way I see them. It can be tough because there's so much intermingling of salt marsh species here on the high marsh. And there's another one of the flower stalks. You see they're just coming. So come on out. These are just starting to bloom. They'll bloom for a while. You can see another one out there. The salt marsh rosemary. Very good. All right, folks. I hope everyone's having a great day and had a great weekend. We had a great turnout for our event on Saturday. If you missed it, there was a part of the event that was broadcast live. That recording is on our Facebook page, probably just a few posts down from this live stream. So feel free and take a look at that. There's some great question interviews and questions and answers of the participant booths after the speakers. So if you just want to fast forward to that portion and hear all about from the folks that participated, that's a nice and a fun section of the live stream to watch if you don't want to watch the whole hour. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll see you next week. Okay, bye everyone.